Hey everyone. So let's just jump right into it. Today we're doing an explainer on a truly heartbreaking yet beautiful imaginary novel called The Fourth Pole. It's this profoundly emotional story all about memory, trauma, and honestly, what happens when a family finally starts dismantling their ancestral home and unearths all the deep secrets buried inside.
Now, before we really unravel this whole mystery, I do want to mention that for full imaginary talks, you can head over to https://imaginarytalks.com/the fourth bowl Japanese literary novel. All right, as we go through this, I want you to keep one really central question in the back of your mind. What becomes of love when memory absolutely refuses to carry it?
So part 1, the two family histories.
The premise here is brilliant. It suggests every family has two distinct histories. On one hand, you've got the spoken history, right? The loud stuff, the victories, the proud moments we literally proclaim around the dinner table. But then, on the other hand, there's the quiet history. These are the drawers that are never opened, a child slowly fading out of a trimmed photograph. It's those lingering silences that we so often mistake for peace.
Every family keeps two histories. And that brings us to the year 2026. We meet 32-year-old Emi, who arrives at her ancestral home out in the Japanese countryside. She's there to help her 91-year-old grandmother, Chiyo, clear it out to be sold. But without even realizing it, Emi is stepping right into a quiet history that's been waiting over 80 years to finally be spoken aloud.
Which leads us to Section 2, Artifacts of the Forgotten.
Almost immediately, these impossible things start happening to Emi. First off, a fourth bowl mysteriously appears on a family altar that has only ever been set for 3. Then Emi spots this tiny hand at the edge of a family photograph that looks like it's been deliberately trimmed. And then a young woman named Yuki inexplicably shows up at the front gate before sunrise looking exactly like she did decades ago. So Emi is confronted by all this, and it slowly forces her grandmother to acknowledge a deeply buried truth. There were actually 4 daughters in this family, not 3.
And as they dig deeper, the physical evidence really mounts. When they search this old, dusty storehouse, they find a locked cedar chest. Inside are these incredibly heartbreaking items: a child's unworn red kimono covered in white blossoms, a little cloth rabbit missing an ear, and 6 completely unopened letters spanning 12 years. It's Yuki's stuff, just sitting there, completely untouched, wrapped up in a silence that feels, honestly, heavier than the dust covering it.
Let's look at Section 3, 3 sacks of rice. This is where we learn exactly why Yuki was erased, and it all centers on one devastating number: 3. Just 3 sacks of rice. Back in 1934, during a severe, life-threatening famine, the father of the family exchanged 7-year-old Yuki for those 3 sacks of rice, just so the rest of his family wouldn't starve to death. It's gut-wrenching, right? But it wasn't about greed. It was about sheer, desperate survival.
Some truths destroy the people who survive them. Now, we really have to look at the father here not as some villain, but as an ordinary guy forced to make an impossible, soul-crushing choice. It was a choice that absolutely saved his family, but man, it left his surviving daughter Chiyo with an unbearable weight of survivor's guilt that lasted her entire life.
Moving on to Section 4, the burden of silence.
If we trace this unhealed wound across the decades, we see a pretty heartbreaking pattern. 1934 is the famine, when Yuki is sent away. 1958 is Chiyo's wedding, where Yuki is ignored. And then 2026, the return and the healing. What this shows us is that forgetting wasn't just a one-off event. It was a continuous, active series of agonizing choices made over an entire lifetime.
And the absolute most tragic of these choices happened back in 1958 at that wedding. Remember those 6 letters from Yuki? They were left unopened because the family was just terrified of her continued love. And when Yuki actually came back as a young woman just to quietly watch Chiyo's wedding, Chiyo saw her. She saw her standing right by the persimmon tree, but she pretended not to know her. She ignored her own sister out of this paralyzing fear of shame, terrified the whole village would remember how poor they used to be. She essentially chose her pride over her sister.
Finally, Section 5, restored by remembrance. There's a brilliant thematic synthesis here, perfectly captured by Toni Morrison. Love is diminished by silence, but restored by remembrance. You see, healing doesn't require rewriting history. You can't magically undo the past or change the choice of the 3 sacks of rice. But healing simply requires recognition. It's about giving dignity back to those we folded away and hidden in the dark. So we get this beautiful, emotional moment of resolution.
Chiyo finally realizes that the act of forgetting is actually way heavier than the pain of memory itself. She finally speaks Yuki's name aloud. She places a newly written memorial tablet on the altar, and she sets out that fourth bowl of rice. After 80 years of absence, she finally welcomes her little sister home.
Sometimes healing begins the moment someone is willing to say a forgotten name aloud. It's a powerful reminder that remembrance is basically a promise made by the living, a promise to ensure no one remains unnamed just because remembering them happens to hurt. We really do have to face the pain to find the peace.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. What forgotten histories are quietly waiting to be named in your own life? Take a moment to reflect on the silent stories hidden in your own family's history. Ask yourself, is it finally time to set out a fourth bowl of your own?